On the day of my daughter's wedding, I found my photo plastered at the entrance to the reception with a sign that read, "Access denied to this couple." My husband and I turned around in silence. 3 hours later, a single phone call from me transformed the wedding of her dreams into a nightmare she would never forget. Was what I did cruel? Maybe. But after you hear the whole story, you are going to understand why I had no choice. But before we continue, check if you are already subscribed to the channel and write in the comments, where are you watching this video from? We love knowing how far our stories are reaching. I woke up that morning with a tightness in my chest I could not explain. It was not the common anxiety of the mother of the bride. It was something deeper, a feeling that something was about to crumble. I stared at the ceiling of our bedroom and tried to push that omen away. After all, it was Andrea's wedding day, my only daughter. Actually, let's call her Emily. It was the day she had waited for and meticulously planned for the last 8 months. My name is Linda. I am 54 years old, and I have spent the last 30 years working as an accountant at a mid-sized firm. I am not rich, but it is not like I have gone without, either. My husband, James, works as a civil engineer, and together we managed to build a comfortable, honest, and dignified life. We raised Emily with love, dedication, and all the values we considered important: respect, gratitude, and humility. Or at least, that was what I thought. I got out of bed and went to the mirror. I had chosen a navy blue dress, elegant but understated, perfect for the mother of the bride who does not want to outshine her daughter or look unkempt. I ran my hand over the fabric and sighed. Everything was ready. The catering hired, the flowers ordered, the invitations sent. We had invested all our savings into this wedding, not because Emily had asked for something extravagant, but because we wanted her to have a memorable day. James entered the room already dressed, wearing the gray suit we bought especially for the occasion. He looked tense, adjusting the knot of his tie repeatedly. "Ready, honey?" he asked, trying to smile. "Ready?" I replied, although my stomach was churning. The ceremony was going to be at a vineyard just outside of Napa Valley, a charming place that Emily and her fiancé Preston chose together. Preston came from the Sterling family, which was very well established. His father was a renowned lawyer, his mother a mogul in the cosmetics industry. Ever since the engagement, I noticed a subtle change in Emily. She started talking differently, dressing differently, hanging out in different places. When I would comment on something, she would roll her eyes and say I was being old-fashioned, that I needed to modernize. At first, I thought it was just the excitement of a young woman in love wanting to impress the groom's family. But over time, those small changes turned into chasms between us. She started making comments about our house, our car, our clothes. Nothing was direct, always veiled, like little jabs that hurt more than a scream. "Are you guys taking an Uber to the wedding?" she asked 2 weeks prior, with that tone that feigned concern but hid embarrassment. "We are going in our car, Emily." "Why?" I responded. "Oh, it is just that." "Never mind. I just thought we could hire a town car, you know? It looks more elegant." James and I exchanged looks. Our car was a standard sedan, well maintained, but apparently it was not up to the standards of the new life Emily craved. Still, we did not argue. We wanted her to be happy, and if that meant swallowing some unpleasant comments, we would make that sacrifice. We left the house at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The wedding was scheduled for 4, and we wanted to arrive early to help with whatever was needed. During the drive, James took my hand and squeezed it gently. He knew I was nervous. He knew every nuance of my mood after so many years together. "Everything is going to be fine," he murmured. I nodded, but that tightness in my chest only increased. When we arrived at the vineyard, the entrance was beautiful. There was an archway decorated with white flowers and greenery, delicate lights hanging from the trees, and an elegant sign pointing the way to the reception hall. I followed the signs to the main gate, where I expected to find someone from the planning team to guide us. That was where the guests were being received. That was when I saw it. At the entrance gate, right in the center, was a large frame with a gold border. Inside it, a photo. Our photo, mine and James's. It was an image Emily had taken from our social media. The two of us smiling during a 4th of July barbecue, wearing simple, casual clothes. But the photo had been edited. Over our faces was a giant red bar, like the ones that cover criminals in police reports. And right below, in large, bold letters, it was written, "Access denied. This couple does not have permission to enter. Security measure of the family." I felt my legs go weak. James gripped my arm tightly, as if he also needed support not to fall. I looked around, searching for someone, anyone who could explain this. But the security guards at the entrance simply looked at us with neutral expressions, as if they were following orders. "Is this some kind of joke?" James asked, his voice trembling. One of the guards stepped forward. "I am sorry, folks, but you are not on the authorized guest list. I am going to have to ask you to leave." "We are not on the list?" My voice came out louder than I intended. "We are the parents of the bride. We paid for this wedding." The guard did not flinch. "My orders are clear. No authorization, no entry." I looked at the frame again, feeling the humiliation burn in my chest like acid. Our photo, exposed like that, as if we were a threat, a problem to be avoided. I tried to look for Emily with my eyes, scanning the windows of the main house, and then I saw her. She was on the balcony of the second floor, beautiful in her wedding dress, holding her bouquet. But she was not running to defend us. She was not screaming that this was absurd. She was smiling, chatting animatedly with her mother-in-law, Victoria, who was holding a glass of champagne and making a dismissive gesture downwards, as if saying, "Problem solved." Emily saw us. I know she saw us, because our eyes met for a brief second. And in that second, I saw everything I needed to see. There was no surprise in her eyes. There was no shock or indignation. There was only a gleam of satisfaction, as if an inconvenient obstacle had been removed from her perfect path. "James," I said slowly, still looking at my daughter. "Let's go." "Linda, but let's go. Now." I turned my back on that gate, on that humiliating photo, on that daughter I no longer recognized. James hesitated for a moment, but followed me. We walked back to the car in absolute silence. I did not cry. I did not scream. I just felt something inside me break and simultaneously harden like steel. Inside the car, I stared straight ahead while James started the engine with shaking hands. He was in shock, processing what had just happened. But I, strangely, was becoming increasingly lucid. The pain was there, sharp and deep, but along with it came a crystalline clarity. 8 months, I said quietly. "What?" James looked at me. 8 months planning this wedding, every detail, every penny of our savings, and she put us in that frame. James swallowed hard. "Linda, what are we going to do?" I grabbed my purse and opened it, looking for my cell phone. Inside the purse was a folder with all the receipts, contracts, and contact information for the vendors. I was an accountant, after all. I never did anything without documenting everything correctly. And in that moment, that trait of mine was going to prove extremely useful. "We are going home," I said, with a calmness that surprised even me. "And then I am going to make some calls." The drive back home seemed to last an eternity, even though it only took us 40 minutes. James drove in silence, his hands gripping the steering wheel and his jaw tense. I could see the emotions passing across his face. Anger, sadness, confusion, disbelief. He was processing our daughter's betrayal in his own way, internally, while I was already 3 steps ahead, planning exactly what to do. When we parked in front of our building, James turned off the engine but did not get out of the car immediately. He sat there, staring at nothing, until he finally said, "How could she do this to us?" I did not answer, because I did not have an answer either. Or rather, I had one, but it was too painful to verbalize. Emily had discarded us because she considered us an embarrassment in front of the rich family she was now part of. We were the middle-class parents, too common, too simple, not worthy of figuring in her manufactured fairy tale. Inside the apartment, I took off my shoes and went straight to the home office. James followed me, still stunned. I sat at the desk, opened my laptop, and started pulling up all the files I had saved about the wedding. Spreadsheets, contracts, receipts, emails, everything was there, organized, every transaction documented. "What are you going to do?" James asked, leaning against the doorframe. "I am going to cancel everything that can still be canceled, and I am going to charge back everything that has been paid." He blinked, confused. "How? The wedding has already started." "Exactly. I am going to call every vendor right now and inform them that payment has been suspended." James went pale. "Linda, that is going to ruin the party." "Perfect," I replied without taking my eyes off the screen. "She ruined my heart. Now we are even." I could feel James struggling internally. He was a good man, sometimes too generous. Part of him still wanted to believe there was a misunderstanding, that Emily had not done it on purpose. But I knew my daughter better than anyone. I had raised her, rocked her when she cried, taught her to walk, applauded every achievement. And it was exactly because I knew her so well that I knew. That was not a misunderstanding. It was a deliberate choice. I picked up the phone and dialed the first number on my list. The caterer. "Hello, Michael. This is Linda Miller speaking. How are you? Look, I need to talk about my daughter's wedding happening right now." "Yes, that is the one. I need to inform you that I am stopping payment immediately." On the other end of the line, Michael went silent for a few seconds before stammering. "What? How, Mrs. Miller? Service has already started. The team is already there." "I know. And all signed contracts are in my name, correct? I am the contracting party, and as the contracting party, I am exercising my right to cancel. But ma'am, the party is underway. There are 200 people there. That is not my problem, Michael. You have two options. Either you suspend service and pull your team immediately, or you continue serving, but at the sole risk and expense of the groom's family. I am not paying another cent. And if you try to sue me, you will find all our contracts in perfect legal order." I made sure of that. Michael still tried to argue, but I already knew my rights. I had included cancellation clauses in all the contracts, precisely because I am cautious by nature. I never imagined I would use those clauses this way. But life has those ironies. I hung up and immediately called the next one, the DJ. "David, Linda Miller. I need you to stop the music immediately and leave the event." "No, it is not an emergency. It is a contract cancellation. Yes, now. You have 30 minutes to pack up your equipment. After that deadline, I am not responsible for anything." One by one, I went through calling all the vendors. The sound and lighting company, the photographer, the videographer, the florist, even the team of extra servers we hired. To each one, I gave the same message. "Service canceled. Leave immediately. Any continuation will be on the dime of whoever remains." James was sitting in the armchair, his head in his hands. When I finished the last call, he looked at me with an expression that mixed admiration and horror. "You really did it." "I did," I replied, feeling a void in my chest. "And I am not finished yet." I took my personal cell phone and opened my banking app. There were all the transactions from the last few months. The wedding dress, $4,000. The rings, $1,500. The venue, $3,000 just for the deposit. The decor, $3,500. The catering, $6,000. And so on. In total, we had invested more than $60,000 in this wedding. It was practically all our savings from the last 5 years. But here was the part Emily did not know. I had not paid for everything in cash. Part of it was on a zero-interest payment plan on the credit card, and the card was in my name. I called the credit card company. "Good afternoon. I would like to dispute several charges. Yes, they are high-value purchases that were not authorized correctly. I need to suspend pending payments and request a refund on future installments." The representative was efficient. In 20 minutes, all future payments were blocked. The vendors who had not yet received the full amount would have to go after Emily and Preston now, not me anymore. When I hung up the phone, I felt a strange mixture of relief and sadness. Relief for having taken a stand, for not having simply accepted that humiliation in silence. Sadness, because this meant my relationship with my daughter was irretrievably destroyed. The cell phone started ringing. It was a number I did not recognize. I answered. "Hello? Linda!" The hysterical voice of Victoria, the groom's mother, screamed on the other side. "What did you do?" The music stopped. "The catering is packing everything up. The waiters are leaving." "Good afternoon, Victoria," I replied with an icy calm. "I canceled the services that I hired and paid for. If you want to continue the party, Feel free to hire your own vendors. Are you crazy? The wedding has already started. There are 200 people here. There were. Because apparently, you did not want James and me among those people. It was quite clear at the gate. Victoria went silent for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was even more acidic. That was a security measure. You two did not fit the profile of our guests. I understand. And the vendors I hired do not fit anymore either. Problem solved. I'm going to sue you. This is sabotage. It is the exercise of my contractual rights, I completed. All contracts are in my name. All payments came out of my account. Therefore, I have full autonomy to cancel. If you want to sue me, feel free. My lawyer will love to present that photo at the gate as evidence of discrimination. I hung up on her. Seconds later, the cell phone rang again. It was Emily. My daughter. I took a deep breath before answering. Mom. Her voice was choked. Between tears and rage. Why are you doing this? Why are you destroying my wedding? I did not destroy anything, Emily. You destroyed it when you put me in that frame. It was just so you wouldn't be embarrassed. The Sterling family is very demanding, and I thought it would be better. Better to humiliate me publicly? I interrupted. Better to pretend your parents don't exist? Better to treat us like criminals? It wasn't supposed to be like that. I was going to explain everything later. I was going to. Going to what, Emily? Give me some crumb of attention after the fancy party was over? Call me the next day apologizing while telling me how wonderful the wedding I paid for was? She sobbed on the other side. Mom, please, I am begging you. Call the vendors back. The party is chaos. The guests are leaving. Preston is furious. What a shame, I replied. And I realized I felt no pity whatsoever. But that is no longer my problem. I am your daughter. And I was your mother. I was. Until you decided I wasn't good enough to be at your special day. I hung up. And I blocked the number. After blocking Emily's number, I sat there, staring at the black screen of the phone. My hands were shaking slightly. Not from regret, but from pure adrenaline. I had done something irreversible. I had burned a bridge that might never be rebuilt. And yet, I did not feel guilty. James walked over and sat next to me in the armchair. He said nothing for a long time. He just took my hand and held it. His palm was cold and clammy, a sign that he was as affected as I was, just processing it differently. Do you think we did the right thing? He finally asked, his voice hoarse. I don't know if it was the right thing, I admitted, but I know it was necessary. She needed to understand that she cannot treat people like that. Especially not the parents who sacrificed everything for her. James nodded slowly. It is just that she is still our daughter, Linda, even after everything. I know, I whispered. But sometimes loving someone means not allowing them to destroy us. And that was what was happening. She was destroying us little by little, transforming us into something shameful, into something to be hidden. I am not going to live like that. We sat there, in the heavy silence of our apartment, while imagining the chaos that was certainly unfolding at the vineyard. We did not need to be there to visualize it. Confused guests, catering breaking down tables, music interrupted abruptly, Emily crying rivers trying to explain the inexplicable. James's phone rang. He looked at the screen and grimaced. It is Preston. Answer it, I said. I want to hear what he has to say. James put it on speaker. The son-in-law's voice came through furious, almost yelling. James, what the hell is going on? Has your wife lost her mind? Did she destroy my wedding? Your wedding? James replied, and for the first time that day, I heard real firmness in his voice. How curious, Preston. I thought it was my daughter's wedding too. But apparently, we were not welcome. That was a misunderstanding. It was my mother's idea. She wanted to play a joke. A joke? James let out a bitter laugh. Putting a photo of us with a red bar and forbidding our entry was a joke? Preston hesitated. I could hear voices in the background, someone shouting something about the desserts being taken away. Then he came back, with a more calculating tone, less angry. Look, James, let's resolve this like adults. How much do you want? How much do you want, Linda, to back down and call the vendors back? It was my turn to take the phone from James's hand. There is no amount of money that fixes this, Preston. You don't want us there? Perfect. But you aren't going to have the party I paid for. "You are being vindictive and petty," he exploded. "You are ruining your own daughter's life." "No, Preston. I am stopping being a doormat. Big difference." I hung up. Blocked. I blocked his number too. Minutes dragged on. James went to the kitchen and came back with 2 glasses of water. We drank in silence. The apartment was too quiet, as if the house itself was in shock from the day's events. Then my cell phone pinged. A message from an unknown number. I opened it. It was a photo. The image showed the reception hall in complete chaos. Empty tables, overturned chairs, guests standing in groups talking agitatedly. In the corner, I could see Emily sitting on a chair, face in her hands, while Victoria gestured furiously at someone outside the frame. The caption read, "Look what you did. Hope you are happy." I did not recognize the number, but I assumed it was some relative of Preston's or an indignant guest who got my contact somehow. I did not reply. I just saved the photo. It would be useful in case someone tried to sue me for damages. I would have visual proof that the event continued, just without the luxuries I had paid for. More messages started arriving, some from known numbers that hadn't been blocked yet, others from strangers, all in the same tone, accusing me of being cruel, of being vindictive, of having ruined the most important day of Emily's life. But one message stood out. It was from Lisa, my younger sister. She hadn't gone to the wedding because she lived in another state and was 8 months pregnant, unable to travel. But apparently, someone had told her what happened. "Linda, just heard. Are you okay? Need anything? Just want you to know, you did the right thing. Emily crossed the line. I'm with you." Those simple words impacted me in a way I didn't expect. My eyes burned, and for the first time since seeing that frame at the gate, I cried. Not hysterical crying, but silent tears of relief, knowing that at least one person in the family understood, supported me, didn't judge me as the monster Emily was probably painting to everyone. James saw my tears and hugged me. We stayed like that for a while, embraced on the armchair, while the sun set outside, and the day that should have been one of joy turned to ashes. Eventually, I composed myself. I wiped my face, took a deep breath, and stood up. "I am going to make dinner," I announced. "Linda, don't you have to?" "Yes, I do. I need to do something normal, something to remind me that life goes on." I went to the kitchen and started preparing a simple dinner: roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and green beans. Homemade comfort food, the kind Emily used to love when she was little, before she started frequenting fancy restaurants and developing palates too sophisticated for her own mother's cooking. While I cooked, I let my mind wander. I remembered when Emily was a baby, so small and fragile in my arms. I remembered her first steps, her first words. I remembered the day she entered school for the first time, crying, clinging to my leg, and how I needed to be strong to say goodbye and let her find her way. I remembered every night I spent awake when she had a fever, every school project I helped make, every time I dried her tears after a disappointment. I remembered every sacrifice James and I made. Vacations canceled to pay for private school, old clothes to afford her extracurriculars, simple dinners to save for college. And then I remembered the last year, how she had started to change after she met Preston. The snide comments about our house, our clothes, our habits, the way she rolled her eyes when I told a story from work, the way she asked me to try to dress better when we went to meet his parents. It had all been a gradual construction. She didn't wake up one day and decide to reject us. It was a slow process of her convincing herself that we weren't good enough for the world she wanted to enter. And today, with that frame at the gate, was just the culmination of months of disguised contempt. I finished cooking and called James to the table. We ate in silence, each lost in our own thoughts. The food was good, but it tasted like nothing. It is difficult to savor anything when your heart is broken. After dinner, while washing the dishes, I heard my cell phone ring again. This time, it was a landline number. I answered cautiously. "Linda?" It was a female voice, polite. "This is Sandra, from Chef Michael's catering team. He asked me to call to confirm. Do you really want to cancel the service? Because if it is a misunderstanding, we are still in time to reverse it." "It is not a misunderstanding, Sandra. You can pack everything up." "Understood. I just wanted to confirm because, well, it is quite complicated here. The bride is crying her eyes out, and the guests are indignant. I imagine, I replied without emotion. There was a pause. Then Sandra said, in a lower voice, "Between us, Mrs. Miller, I don't know what happened, but from the little I saw, I think you did the right thing. No one deserves to be disrespected like that." I thanked her and hung up. It was comforting, in a way, to know that even strangers could see the injustice of the situation. The night fell heavy over our apartment. James had gone to lie down earlier, emotionally exhausted, but I couldn't sleep. I stayed in the living room, with all the lights off, except for a dim lamp in the corner, looking at the cell phone that wouldn't stop receiving messages. Most were from busybodies, giving unsolicited opinions on how I should have reacted. Some said I was right, that Emily deserved it. Others called me a monster, said no real mother would do that to her own daughter, as if they knew what it is to be publicly humiliated by the person you raised, loved, and sacrificed everything for. One message in particular caught my attention. It was from Ashley, a childhood friend of Emily's. She wrote, "Aunt Linda, I know it is none of my business, but Emily is desperate. She is feeling really sick from crying so much. Is there any way you guys can talk?" I took a deep breath. Part of me, that maternal part that never completely dies, shrank at the idea of Emily suffering. But then I remembered the smile on her face when she saw us outside the gate. That satisfied smile of someone who just got rid of an awkward problem. I replied to Ashley, "Tell her I am here, in the same place as always. If she wants to talk, she knows where to find me. But I am not going to beg for an apology she isn't ready to give." I locked the phone and stood up. I went to Emily's room, which was now empty since she moved in with Preston 3 months ago, and I turned on the light. The room was exactly as she left it, clean, organized, but empty of life. She had taken everything she considered important. What was left were just memories plastered on the walls through picture frames and old posters. I looked at a particular photo, Emily at 10 years old, smiling without her front teeth, hugging me tight while I lifted her off the ground. At what moment did I lose this child? At what moment did she transform into the cold and calculating woman capable of doing what she did today? I heard footsteps behind me. James was at the door, his eyes red and swollen. He had cried alone in the bedroom. I knew my husband well enough to know. "Can't sleep either?" he asked. "No. I keep thinking about everything we did wrong. Where did we fail her?" James walked into the room and sat on Emily's bed. "I don't know if we failed, Linda. I think we just loved too much. We gave her everything she asked for. We protected her from every difficulty. Maybe she never learned the value of things because she never had to fight for anything." His words hurt because they contained truth. We had been doting parents, protective to the extreme. We wanted Emily to have everything we didn't have. And in the process, maybe we created someone who didn't know how to appreciate, someone who always expected more, without questioning where it came from or how much it cost. "Do you think she is going to look for us?" I asked. "Eventually," James sighed. "When the situation calms down and she realizes what she lost. But I don't know if when she comes, we are still going to want to open the door." That surprised me. James was always the more flexible of the two, the one who yielded first, the one who forgave faster. Hearing that hardness in his voice showed me how much Emily had hurt not just me, but him too. We went back to the living room. James turned on the television, more to have some background noise than to really watch anything. We stayed there, side by side on the sofa, pretending to pay attention to some old movie that was playing while our minds remained trapped in the events of the day. Around midnight, the doorbell rang. James and I exchanged alarmed looks. Who would be here at this hour? I went to the intercom with my heart racing. "Who is it?" The voice that answered was hoarse from crying. "It is me, Mom. Please, let me in. I need to talk to you guys. Emily." My daughter was down there, in the middle of the night, still in her wedding dress. Through the intercom camera, I could see she was alone, without Preston, without Victoria, without any of the fancy guests. Just her, vulnerable and broken. James came closer. "Are you going to let her up?" My hand hovered over the button that would unlock the door. It would be so easy to press it, Let her in, hug her, and forgive everything. That was what my mother's heart screamed for me to do. But my reason, that part of me that had been trampled on today, hesitated. Mom, please. Emily's voice came again through the intercom. I know I ruined everything. I know I don't deserve it, but I need to talk to you guys. I need to apologize. I pressed the button and unlocked the door, not because I was ready to forgive, but because she deserved the chance to explain herself, and I deserved to hear what she had to say face to face. The minutes until she reached our floor seemed infinite. When the elevator door opened and Emily appeared, I lost my breath. The wedding dress was dirty, her makeup smeared, her hair undone. She seemed to have aged 10 years in a few hours. She stopped at the doorway when I opened it, as if expecting permission to enter. Her eyes were red and swollen, and she was shaking slightly. I didn't know if from cold or emotion. You can come in, I said, my voice coming out colder than I intended. Emily walked in slowly, looking around as if visiting a place she hadn't seen for years, not just months. James remained in the living room, arms crossed, his posture clearly defensive. Emily began, but her voice failed. She tried again. I ruined everything. I ruined the wedding. I ruined our relationship. I ruined everything. Yes, I nodded simply. You ruined it. She was startled by my direct agreement, as if she expected me to immediately deny it and comfort her like I always did. But those days were over. Preston broke up with me, she said, words coming out in sobs. Right there, in front of everyone, he said I was a fraud, that I had lied about you guys having money, that I had ruined his reputation with my dysfunctional family. He called me a gold digger. Part of me felt pity, but another part, a part I didn't know, and that was born today, thought, good, deserved. Victoria, Emily continued. She threw me out of the vineyard, said I would never be welcome in the Sterling family, that I was an embarrassment. The guests left. The party ended in an hour after everything was packed up. It was humiliating. Humiliating? I repeated the word, slowly. Like putting a photo of your parents with a red bar saying they can't enter? That kind of humiliating? Emily lowered her head, tears dripping onto the floor. I know, Mom. I have no excuse. I just wanted so much to be part of that world, their world, where everything is perfect and glamorous and I thought you guys didn't fit. I thought it would be better for everyone if you weren't there. Better for you, I corrected. Not for everyone. For you. Because you were ashamed of us. I was, she screamed suddenly, lifting her wet face. I was ashamed. Yes. You don't understand what it is to be always surrounded by people who have everything, who never had to worry about money, who travel abroad every year, who wear designer clothes, who aren't us, that aren't us. James finished for her, his voice heavy with disappointment. Emily sobbed harder. I know how this sounds. I know it looks like I am a horrible person, and maybe I am. But I wanted to be like them. And to belong, you needed to erase us, I said. Transform us into something shameful that needed to stay hidden. Emily, we gave you everything, and you threw us in the trash like we were waste. Emily was there, standing in the middle of our living room, looking like a lost child despite the expensive wedding dress she wore. She wiped her face with the back of her hand, smearing the destroyed makeup even more. I know I have no right to ask for anything, she said with a trembling voice. But I need a place to sleep tonight. Preston changed the code to the apartment. I can't get in. I have nowhere to go. I looked at James. I saw in his eyes the same conflict I felt. The will to help, fighting against the need to set boundaries. We were parents, after all. The protective instinct doesn't die overnight, even when your daughter stabs you in the back. You can stay in your room, I said finally. But tomorrow we need to have a serious conversation about all this. Without yelling, without manipulative tears. A real conversation. Emily nodded quickly, relieved. Thanks, Mom. Thanks truly. I promise that. Don't promise anything now. I cut her off. Go take a shower and rest. Tomorrow we talk. She practically ran to the hallway, as if afraid I would change my mind. I heard the door to her room close, then the sound of the shower turning on. James and I were left alone again. Are you really going to let her stay? he asked. For today, yes. But that doesn't mean everything is forgiven. She needs to understand the gravity of what she did and needs to show, with actions, not words, that she actually changed. James nodded thoughtfully. And if she doesn't change? Then she will have to find another place to live, because I am not going to be my own daughter's doormat anymore. I took a long time to fall asleep that night. I went over every event of the day mentally, from waking up full of expectations to seeing that humiliating frame at the gate, to making the decision to cancel everything, until Emily appeared at our door. It was as if I had lived a whole week in a single day. When I finally slept, my dreams were confused and disturbing. I dreamt I was at the wedding, but I was the one being thrown out by guards while Emily watched laughing. I dreamt of James telling me I had overreacted, that I had destroyed our family. I woke up several times during the night, with my heart racing and the feeling that something was wrong. In the morning, I woke up to the smell of coffee. Confused, I got up and went to the kitchen. Emily was there, still in pajamas. She had found old clothes she left behind, making coffee and toast. The scene was so domestic, so normal, that for a moment it seemed none of that had happened. "Good morning, Mom," she said slowly when she saw me. Her eyes were still swollen, but she had washed her face and tied back her hair. She looked more like the Emily I knew, not that sophisticated and snobby version she had become. "Good morning," I replied, still processing the scene. "I made coffee. How you like it? And there is bread in the toaster." I accepted the mug she offered and sat at the table. James appeared right after, just as surprised as I was with the scene. During breakfast, we stayed in silence. It was a loaded silence, full of unsaid things, but at least it wasn't hostile. When we finished, Emily collected the mugs and washed the dishes without being asked, something she hadn't done for months, always saying she was too busy or too tired. "Can we talk now?" she asked when she finished. We went to the living room. Emily sat in an armchair, James and I on the sofa, maintaining that physical distance that symbolized the emotional distance that now existed between us. "I thought a lot during the night," Emily began, with nervous hands in her lap, "about everything that happened, about the choices I made. And I realize I lost myself. I lost myself trying to be someone I am not." "Go on," I encouraged, keeping my tone neutral. "When I met Preston, it was like entering a new world, a world I always saw from the outside, you know? Those huge houses, those imported cars, those international trips, and suddenly I was inside, and it was so easy to get carried away. It started with small things. Him correcting the way I spoke, his mother suggesting better stores to buy clothes. At first, I thought they were helping me improve, but they weren't," James said softly. "No, they were molding me, transforming me into a version of me that fit into their world. And I allowed it. Worse, I actively collaborated. Because part of me was always ashamed of our simple life, of our modest house, of our old car. Not because you weren't good parents. You were the best. But because I wanted more. I always wanted more." Her words were honest, cruelly honest. And they hurt because they contained a truth I always suspected but never wanted to admit. Emily had never been satisfied with what we had. She always looked with envy at what others had. When Victoria suggested that sign, Emily continued with a choked voice. She said it would be better for everyone, that you would feel uncomfortable amidst their guests, that it would be embarrassing for you and for me. And I believed it, or wanted to believe it, because it was easier than admitting I was choosing their approval over your love. "You betrayed us," I said simply, "for social approval. You sold us for a seat at the table with people who don't even care about you for real." "I know. And yesterday I found out the worst possible way. When everything crumbled, when Preston rejected me and Victoria kicked me out, none of those fancy guests stood by my side. No one defended me. Everyone simply left, relieved not to have to witness that embarrassment anymore. I realized I had no one, because the only people who really loved me were you guys, and I had just kicked you out of my life." Tears ran down her face again, but this time they didn't look like tears of self-pity. They looked like tears of real understanding, real regret. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she said. "Not immediately, maybe never. But I need you to know, I am ashamed, truly ashamed. Not of you, of me, of what I became, of what I did. James cleared his throat. I could see he was emotional, fighting the urge to get up and hug our daughter, as he always did when she was suffering. Recognizing the mistake is the first step, James said carefully. But it is not enough. You need to show that you changed, with actions, not words. I know, and I will. I don't know how yet, but I will. I looked at my daughter, at the woman she was now, no longer the child I remembered. I saw in her a fragility I hadn't seen before, a real crack in the pedestal she herself had built. What are you going to do now? I asked. Regarding Preston? The apartment? Your life? Emily sighed deeply. I don't know. I need to get my stuff from the apartment, but I don't know how, since he changed the code. I need to cancel. Well, cancel what was left of the wedding. Let everyone know. And I need to figure out what to do with my life. Because honestly, I don't know who I am anymore. You can stay here, I said, surprising even myself, temporarily, until you get organized. But with conditions. Which ones? First, you are going to look for a job. You are not going to depend on us financially. Second, you are going to pay rent, even if symbolic, to demonstrate you understand responsibility. Third, you are going to go to therapy. You need to work on those issues of self-image and values. And fourth, no contact with the Sterling family unless strictly necessary to resolve practical matters. Emily nodded at every condition. I accept everything. And Mom, thank you for not throwing me out on the street like I deserved. I am not doing this because I pity you, I clarified. I am doing it because, despite everything, I still have hope that the girl we raised exists in there, the kind, generous, and humble girl who seems to have gotten lost along the way, and I want to give her a chance to come back. The following days were strange and tense. Emily stayed at home, practically secluded in her old room, leaving only for meals and to use the bathroom. She spent hours on the computer, supposedly looking for a job and dealing with the consequences of the disastrous wedding. The apartment she shared with Preston was truly inaccessible. He had changed all the codes and refused any contact. It was necessary to contact a lawyer to ensure Emily could recover her personal belongings. The process was exhausting, with Preston and Victoria creating obstacles at every step. On Tuesday, 3 days after the failed wedding, Emily managed to schedule a time to pick up her things. James offered to go with her, more to guarantee nothing bad happened than to help carry boxes. I stayed home, trying to maintain some normality in my usual routine. When they returned, hours later, Emily was downcast but relieved. She had managed to rescue her clothes, documents, and personal objects. Preston had stayed locked in the bedroom the whole time, refusing to appear, while Victoria supervised every move with a critical eye, making sure Emily didn't take anything belonging to the Sterling family. It was humiliating, Emily told me that night. Victoria kept making comments the whole time about how I had ruined her son's life, how I had destroyed the family's reputation. And the worst is that she was right. I did all that. You made bad decisions, I corrected. But they aren't innocent victims in this either. That frame was Victoria's idea. She was cruel and elitist. You fell for her game. But she started the game. Emily nodded thoughtfully. You know what is funny? When I was there gathering my things, I looked around that fancy apartment with all that expensive decor, and I realized I was never happy there. I was always tense, always trying to be perfect, always afraid of doing something wrong and disappointing Preston or his mom. It was a gilded cage. And now you are free, James said, putting his hand on her shoulder. In the following days, Emily started showing real signs of change. She got a temporary job at a clothing store in the mall. Nothing glamorous, but it was honest and paid enough for her to contribute at home, as promised. She also started going to therapy online, something I insisted was non-negotiable. The sessions seemed to be helping. She would come back from them more reflective, sometimes commenting on things she had discovered about herself. The therapist said, I have imposter syndrome, she told me once, that I always felt inadequate and tried to compensate by pretending to be someone I wasn't. And now? I asked. Now I am trying to discover who I really am. Without masks, without pretenses, just me. It was gratifying to see that journey, but I maintained a certain emotional distance. I had been hurt deeply and knew healing would take time. James was having an easier time forgiving. He always had the softer heart, but I needed to see consistency before completely opening my guard again. 1 month after the failed wedding, something unexpected happened. I was coming back from the grocery store when I ran into Victoria on the street. She was leaving a luxury store, loaded with bags, when our eyes met. For a moment, I thought she would simply ignore me and go on her way. But she stopped, adjusted her sunglasses, and walked straight towards me. "Linda," she said, the name coming out of her mouth as if it were something sour. "Victoria," I replied in the same tone. "I imagine you are satisfied," she began, with that air of superiority that seemed to be permanent. "You destroyed my son's wedding. You ruined my family's reputation. You must be very proud." "I didn't destroy anything," I replied calmly, although my blood was boiling. "I just refused to bankroll a party I was banned from attending. Remember that photo at the gate? That was your idea, wasn't it?" Victoria had the decency to look slightly uncomfortable, but recovered quickly. "It was a necessary measure. You two didn't fit the profile of our guests. It would have been embarrassing for everyone." "Embarrassing," I repeated, letting out a bitter laugh. "Do you know what is embarrassing, Victoria? It is raising a spoiled son, in debt up to his neck, who only cares about appearances. It is pretending to have a glamorous life while barely able to pay the bills. Because I know, Victoria. I know about Preston's debts, about the apartment that is about to be foreclosed by the bank. My daughter told me everything." Victoria's face went red. "You don't know anything. I know more than you imagine. And you know what else? I am glad everything crumbled, because my daughter escaped entering permanently into your toxic family, full of debts and phoniness. She might have made mistakes, but at least she still has time to fix it. Instead, you and your son are going to stay trapped in that lie you built." I left Victoria there, mouth open and furious, and went on my way with my head held high. It was liberating to say all that, to throw the truth in her face without fear. For the first time in weeks, I felt I had completely recovered my dignity. When I arrived home and told James about the encounter, he laughed. "Did you really say all that?" "I did, and it was worth every word." Emily was in the room, but had heard our conversation. She came out with a strange expression on her face. "Victoria was on the street?" "She was, and tried to blame me for everything that happened." "What did you tell her?" "The truth, that she and her family are a fraud, and that you were lucky to escape." Emily sat in the armchair, thoughtful. "You know, Mom, for a long time I envied their life. I thought that was the world I wanted to be part of. But now, looking from the outside, I realize it was all fake. The luxury, the elegance, the status, all built on lies and debt. The only real thing I had was here, with you guys." Those words moved me more than I expected. I felt my eyes burn, but blinked quickly to push away the tears. "I hope you really believe that," I said. "Because if it is just another thing you are saying to please us—" "It is not," Emily interrupted firmly. "I learned, Mom, the hardest way possible. But I learned, real values cannot be bought, and real family doesn't abandon you when things get tough. You guys had every right to abandon me after what I did, but you didn't. And that is worth more than any fancy wedding or luxury apartment." James cleared his throat, emotional. I just nodded, still protecting my heart, but feeling the walls starting to lower slowly. 2 months passed since the day of the disastrous wedding. Life had found a new rhythm, different from before but not necessarily bad. Emily was working regularly, paying her share at home and going to therapy religiously. The changes in her were visible. She was lighter, more authentic, more like the person I remembered from years ago. But I still maintained a certain reserve, not for lack of willingness to forgive completely, but because certain wounds take time to heal. James told me I was being too hard, that Emily was doing everything right and deserved a full second chance. And he was right, to a certain point. But I needed my own time. It was a Thursday, an ordinary day, that things finally changed for real. I was coming back from the market when I received a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, thinking it was spam, but something made me accept the call. "Hello?" Linda Miller? The voice was male. Formal. Yes, this is she. This is Dr. Stevens from General Hospital. We are calling because you are listed as the emergency contact for Emily Miller. There was an accident. My heart stopped. What kind of accident? Is she okay? She was hit by a car while crossing the street. She is conscious, but we need to run some tests. Can you come down here? I dropped everything at work and ran out. I called James on the way, who said he would also go straight to the hospital. My mind was in absolute panic, imagining the worst scenarios. All the grudges, all the accumulated anger, everything disappeared in an instant. All that mattered was that my daughter was hurt and needed me. When I arrived at the hospital, I went straight to the ER. I found Emily lying on a gurney, with a cut on her forehead being cleaned by a nurse. She was pale but conscious, and when she saw me, her eyes filled with tears. "Mom," she said with a weak voice. I ran to her and held her hand. "I am here, sweetie. I am here." "I was so scared," she confessed, tears streaming down. "So scared of dying without having fixed things right with you, without you having forgiven me for real." My heart broke. "Don't talk nonsense. You are going to be fine. And regarding forgiveness, Emily, I never stopped loving you. I felt hurt, disappointed, but I never stopped loving you. I know, and I don't deserve it. I don't deserve your love. I don't deserve you having run down here. I don't deserve." "Enough," I interrupted gently, wiping the tears from her face carefully so as not to touch the wound. "You are my daughter. You will always be my daughter. And yes, you messed up big time. You hurt me in a way I never imagined possible. But I see you are changing, that you are trying to be a better person, and that counts." James arrived at that moment, panting from having run through the hallways. When he saw Emily, his face lit up with relief. He joined us, and we stayed there, the three of us, like a united family again. The tests showed Emily had been lucky. Besides the cut on the forehead that needed a few stitches, there were only bruises and scrapes. Nothing broken, no serious damage. The doctor said she could go home the same day, but needed rest. On the way back home, Emily was quiet in the back seat of the car. I turned to look at her and saw she was crying silently. "What's wrong?" I asked. "Today I realized something," she said, wiping her eyes. "When that car came in my direction and I thought I was going to die, do you know what my first thought was? What? That I didn't want to die without getting my mom back, without getting my dad back. I didn't think about Preston. I didn't think about the fancy life I wanted. I didn't think about anything material. I thought about you guys and realized you were always everything I really needed. But I was too blind to see it." I reached back and held her hand. "Welcome back, daughter." That night I took care of Emily like I hadn't done for years. I made her favorite food, arranged her pillows, applied medicine to the wounds, and she allowed it without complaining, without pretending she was too independent to need her mother. There was a vulnerability in her that was refreshing, real. In the following days, while Emily recovered at home, we had long conversations. Real conversations, not those superficial ones we had for months. She told me about the pressure she felt to impress the Sterlings, about how Victoria constantly criticized her and made her feel inferior, about how Preston was controlling and manipulative in ways she only perceived after everything ended. "He made me feel lucky to be with him," she confessed, "as if I should thank him every day for choosing me, even though I was from a simple family." And I believed it. I thought he was doing me a favor, that I needed to mold myself to what he wanted to deserve that relationship. "That is not love," I said firmly. "True love doesn't make you feel inferior, it makes you feel valued exactly as you are." Emily nodded. "I see it now, especially when I compare it to you guys. You always loved me unconditionally, even when I was horrible to you, even when I rejected you in the worst way possible. You didn't give up on me. That is love." I felt something inside me finally heal. The wounds were still there, the scars would remain, but the bleeding had stopped. "I forgive you," I said, and realized it was true. Completely. It doesn't mean I am going to forget what happened, but it means I am no longer going to let that define our relationship going forward. Emily started crying again. She had been very emotional since the accident. "Thanks, Mom. You don't know how much this means to me. I promise I am going to spend the rest of my life showing I deserve this forgiveness. Don't do it to deserve my forgiveness, I said. Do it for yourself. Be the best version of you that you can be. Not for my approval, but because you deserve to be happy being authentic. 6 months after the failed wedding, my life was unrecognizable compared to that terrible day. Emily had moved into a small apartment she shared with 2 coworkers. She had been promoted at the store and now earned enough to have her independence. But she came to have dinner with us at least twice a week, and those meals were full of laughter, genuine conversations, and lots of affection. The legal separation between Emily and Preston had finally concluded. It wasn't pretty. Victoria tried everything to complicate matters, even demanding Emily pay for moral damages to her son. But in the end, since the marriage had never been officially registered, they planned to do it after the party. There wasn't much to do legally. Everyone went their own way. I heard through the grapevine that Preston had moved to another city, apparently to run away from debts and the scandal. Victoria, too proud to admit imminent bankruptcy, continued pretending to be wealthy while quietly selling her valuable belongings to pay creditors. As for me, I discovered that that day at the gate, however painful it might have been, taught me something valuable. Self-love is not selfishness. Setting boundaries is not a lack of love, and sometimes letting someone face the consequences of their actions is the greatest demonstration of love you can give. Emily had learned the lesson too. She was building a life based on real values, not appearances. She had true friends, not strategic social contacts. She was dating a guy she met in group therapy. Someone gentle, humble, who worked as a teacher and loved her for who she was, not for who she pretended to be. "Mom," Emily told me one day while we were helping prepare lunch, "I never thanked you for doing what you did that day, for canceling everything." "You already thanked me several times," I replied, chopping vegetables. "No, but I need you to understand. If you hadn't done that, I would have gotten married, and it would have been the biggest mistake of my life. I would have stayed trapped in a miserable marriage, trying to keep up appearances, destroying myself little by little. You saved me from myself." I stopped what I was doing and looked at her. "You would have realized eventually. Maybe it would have taken longer, but you would have realized. Maybe, or maybe not. Maybe I would have stayed trapped in that lie forever, afraid to admit I had made a mistake. But you forced everything to explode at once, and although it was horrible in the moment, it was necessary. It was liberating, in a way." James, who was setting the table, stopped to listen to us. "You know what I learned from all this?" he said. "That sometimes the toughest love is the one that says no, that sets consequences. It is easier to give in, to say yes to everything, to be the cool parent, but that doesn't help anyone grow." Emily hugged us both. "You are the best parents I could have had, and I was an idiot for not seeing it before." "You were lost," I said, returning the hug. "But now you found yourself, and that is what matters." That night, after Emily left, James and I stood on the balcony of the apartment, drinking wine and looking at the city lights. It was a pleasant night, with a gentle breeze. "Are you happy?" he asked me suddenly. I thought about the question. Was I happy, despite everything that had happened, all the pain, all the betrayal? "I am," I replied honestly. "Not in the same way I was before. I am more cautious now, more guarded, but I am happy. Happy for having set my boundaries, for having defended my dignity, for having forced necessary changes, and happy to see our daughter transform into someone I can truly respect again." James smiled. "Me too. And you know what else? That wedding would never have made you happy, even if everything had gone well. You would have spent the whole day uncomfortable, being judged by snobby people, pretending to be something you are not. In the end, not going was a blessing. A painful blessing," I corrected. "But yes, a blessing." A few weeks later, I received a letter in the mail. It was from Victoria. I was tempted to throw it away without opening it, but curiosity won out. The letter was short and direct. "Linda, I am not good with apologies, so I will be brief. I was wrong about you and your family. What I did on the wedding day was cruel and snobbish. I spent months blaming you for the disgrace, but the truth is, the disgrace existed long before. My son and I were living a lie, and you just brought the truth to light. I am moving upstate, to live with my sister. I can no longer afford to keep up appearances in the city. I hope Emily is doing well. She deserved better than what my son could offer. Victoria Sterling. I showed the letter to James and Emily. Emily was surprised. I never imagined she would have the humility to admit this. Sometimes people change when they lose everything, I said. When there is no longer a facade to maintain, they are forced to face who they really are. Are you going to reply? James asked. No. There is nothing to say. I accept her apology. But I don't need to be involved in that story anymore. And so I closed that chapter completely. Today, 1 year after that fateful day, I look back and see the whole journey with clarity. I see a mother who loved her daughter enough to let her fall. I see a daughter who needed to lose everything to find what really mattered. I see a father who learned that strong love isn't always soft love. And I see a family that broke, but then rebuilt itself stronger and more authentic. That frame at the gate, with our photo and those cruel words, could have destroyed us. It could have been the end of our family, but instead, it became the beginning of something new. A family based on mutual respect, healthy boundaries, and true love that does not accept being trampled on. Emily is happy now. Truly happy. Not that fake happiness based on status and appearances. She works, studies, has healthy relationships, and most importantly, knows who she is and isn't ashamed of it. James and I are doing well too. More united than ever, strengthened by the ordeal we faced together. We learned we are stronger than we thought, more resilient, more capable of making difficult decisions when necessary. And I, Linda, discovered I can be kind without being a doormat, that I can love without erasing myself, that I can forgive without forgetting, and that sometimes the greatest proof of love is letting the consequences happen, no matter how painful it is. That day at the gate changed everything, but in the end, it changed it for the better. Now, if you liked this story, click subscribe, and tell me in the comments which part left your jaw on the floor. Oh, and don't forget to become a member to get access to exclusive videos that I don't post here. I will see you there.